So let's take a look at something that you wrote earlier today, BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. Great time to remind you, if you want to go check that out, it's $1 for 12 months of access to get into Blue White Illustrated and to get Ryan Snyder's recruiting information. One of the things that you've said so far this year is that you didn't think that Penn State could get to that top 10 class again because of the lack of 5 stars. But some things have changed. What's changed?
Yeah, they have 10 4-stars. I didn't see, that Penn State hasn't had too many classes where they surpass 15 4-star players. And right now, they are certainly on pace to potentially do that. I wrote in our write-up today. I mean, these are just the 4-star players who are still available. Derrick LeBlanc, Evan Link, Jakeem Jackson, Kavion Keys, London Montgomery, Jason Moore, Stanton Ramel, Tamir Robinson, Tony Rojas, Cam Seldon, Elliot Washington, and Webb. That's a dozen guys who realistically, I could see if any of those committed to Penn State, it wouldn't shock me. Now, they're not going to get all of these guys. Of course, they literally don't have room for all of them. But if they just landed 5 of those guys, they're in pretty good shape to finish top 10. If you go back to last year, Oklahoma did not have a single 5-star player in its class. It had 17 4-star players and finished 8th overall. That's the recipe now. So when I was looking at this 6 weeks ago, I looked at the lack of 5-star talent, and to me, that was going to be the issue for Penn State. But man, I didn't see a Tamarian Parker. I thought the Kari Nelson was realistic, but I wasn't ready to make a pick for it or anything like that. There are some dominoes that have fallen since that make a 15 player or 15 4-star player class realistic. So for example, I mean, I already have Tamir and Tony Rojas kind of penciled in. I know, God, if they go elsewhere, I'm going to get murdered on YouTube. But I have them penciled in. So you're already there at kind of 12. And London Montgomery, I think, is pretty realistic. There's 13. Evan Link, Jason Moore, 2 guys who I think could really potentially end up here. Boom, you're at 15. And that's not even counting an Elliot Washington, who I think is pretty much, it's going to be either Michigan State or Penn State. He's not going to go to Alabama. You have Cam Seldon, who's kind of a mystery. Some people feel good. He's just really quiet. That's absolutely possible. So there's a lot of ways that they can get to that number. And, man, I think 15 4-star players is absolutely realistic and is probable at this point, which should put Penn State on pace to have a top 10 class.
So I want to go through a couple of those things piece by piece because there's a lot of some information, some questions about that. You've talked about finding another 5-star player before, and I know you just kind of said, maybe don't worry as much about that, but I was just thinking about Cam Seldon, and he has 5-star athleticism, but there's so little information outside of that about him. His senior season, could he be a guy that surprises, and because of that physical profile and the way if he produces his senior season, do you think that's a guy, if he landed at Penn State, could be a surprise in that situation, or am I taking too big of a bite of the apple here when it comes to the hypotheticals?
Too big of a bite. Sorry there, buddy. He's number 113 right now. Here's the issue is to make a 113 to a top 30 jump, we need testing numbers. We need camp information. And Cam Seldon is playing very, very small schools. He is just on a whole different level from everybody else. And I know we say that about a lot of guys. That he's on an even more drastic level than what Julian Fleming was when he was at Southern Columbia, of course, which is a smaller school, and Fleming just put up all these crazy numbers. Seldon's gap is even bigger than that. So that makes it very difficult for me to see that happening. Especially, I mean, we do have some track numbers and stuff, but just for that massive of a jump, I think is probably unrealistic at this point. The guys who make sense really are kind of Jason Moore. He's at 46-ish, I believe, in our rankings at the moment. He makes sense as someone that could jump up because he's right on the border. And so is Alex Birchmeier, by the way, too, who I wrote in the article. I could see Alex being a 5-star. So that could get Penn State, 1 4-star and 14 4-star, something like that. Birchmeier's at number 31 right now. Right now we have 25 guys as 5-star players. The class will finish with 32 5-star players. So he's right there on the bubble. I absolutely could see Birchmeier, and I think Jason Moore is probably the most realistic. The other guy, too, Derrick LeBlanc, he's a top 100 prospect at number 73. Possibly, I could maybe see that, especially because he's playing elite Florida competition. So But right now, more Birchmeier, they make the most sense.
Yeah, and LeBlanc, according just looking at him at the photos of his official visit, looks like he's really filling out in that defensive tackle body heading into his senior season. Stick there for a second. I want to get to Tony Rojas, but just the Derrick LeBlanc thing, it's too good of a transition. Penn State, right now, we talked about this, I think, previously, that the corner position doesn't seem like there's a great fit right now for the Nittany Lions. To add somebody from outside, maybe from internally, they could flip somebody in their class to play that corner position along with Lamont Payne. So Derrick LeBlanc and Jakeem Jackson. Can you go in a little bit more detail about those two guys? Did you get the sense they want to play together, or they just want to kind of tie their recruiting together? And is that a potential fix for both positions of defensive tackle and corner if Penn State could land both?
Well, one thing I'll say off the bat, too, is when we did our podcast yesterday on King Mac, right? And I was saying, like, oh, Jackson came to mind. Can't think of too many others. I had a total brain fart. I didn't include Elliot Washington in that, who is absolutely realistic. I actually kind of think Elliot Washington is more realistic than Jakeem Jackson. So that was a massive, just a brain fart on my end, not including him in that talk. So right now, Elliot Washington, I would lean towards him ending up Penn State more than Jakeem Jackson. And that's only just because Jakeem Jackson is going all the way till July 28th with LeBlanc. We're talking about 4 weeks of recruiting against Florida and Oklahoma and Tennessee and some awesome schools who will throw money around. That's why I just don't want to go chips into any kind of basket there, because a lot of things can happen. I do think Penn State has a real shot with LeBlanc and Jackson. But again, and yes, I do think they will play together, or they'll have real interest together. But when you have 4 weeks, like, so much will get sorted out. Like, all these schools are going to be telling them, yeah, we want you, we want you, we want you. And then you're going to get to July 26th, and he's going to find out maybe one or two don't really want him.
Yeah.
They're going to slow play him. So it's just hard to say. I think those two would like to play with each other if it works out that way. But man, so many players say that all the time, and it doesn't work out that way. It's just, I think it's something that we, not necessarily what you're saying right now, but like as an industry, sometimes we put just a little too much stock into.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to get a sense of, is it a serious thing of like Kobe and Kalen King wanted to play together, or is it more like it'd be great if we could, right?
Kobe and Kalen are twin brothers.
Right.
That's way different than two teammates. I see teammates all the time talk about that. Twin brothers make a lot of sense. We see twin brothers play together all the time.
Yeah.
But now obviously it's a lot different when they're two different families.
Okay, so I waited too long to bring this up. I do have to ask about Tony Rojas. Situation of moving his commitment back from the 5th to the 14th, the day before Tamir Robinson decides. So do you have any information on that particular situation of the delay, anything that you know about what's going on there?
Tony Rojas just admitted today that he's committed. He put it on Twitter. I'm still 110% committed to the school. I don't have the tweet from me. I'm paraphrasing. I'm 110% committed to the school that I will be going to. I'm just pushing this back for personal reasons. So Tony Rojas admitted that he's committed, guys. I think that's all you really need to know right there. Okay. Yeah. We've all been expecting him to go to Penn State. He didn't end up going back for the Georgia official visit. There's a lot of ways to look at it, but the fact that he just kind of put that out there is really all you need to know. And sorry, my phone is not on mute right now. If you can tell, people are blasting me.
Yeah, and it's good because your phone is also your camera, so it's doing double duty.
Yeah. If you heard that phone call earlier, I was scrambling to turn on.
Through the magic of television, I don't think we saw most of it, so that's my job. Last thing is I want to get into one particular position that I've been thinking about. We've been talking a lot about at the Blue White Illustrated message board. It is the running back situation for 2023 with you've got Treyaun Webb from Florida, London Montgomery from Scranton Prep. I've said, really, I think realistically, with all the other players we talked about, you want one running back this cycle. But that doesn't mean that they can't take both. And it's something you've been bringing up more and more lately, that it is entirely possible. Is this very much over like a first come, first serve in all of the recruiting situation? Like if one of them commits soon and then bang, 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 3 other positions commit, then you might have to make that conversation? Or is this a situation where if one of them commits first, they'll take both because they really want the second?
Yeah. We talked about this, I think maybe Tuesday with Greg, or you and I talked about it at some point. It's every commitment just impacts the other. So it's just really hard to answer. Say Treyaun Webb waits another couple weeks and London Montgomery makes a decision here soon, but in between those, there's 3 other commitments and you're already, boom, you're at 20. Well, then you got to think about some things because maybe you don't have Emma Link in the fold, or maybe Jason Moore's still out there, or Derrick LeBlanc. It's just really hard to say. What I'll say is, what I do feel confident in saying is, for the longest, man, I got to turn these notifications. I got to turn this sound off. Now I got ESPN. I lost my train of thought now. What I will say is that for the longest time, I thought 1 running back, and I'd had a lot of people telling me that. I do think 2 is realistic now, and I think when you look at Penn State's depth chart, it's probably unrealistic to assume that multiple guys do not transfer out after this year, especially if Nick Singleton is who we think he is. Okay. So we know Nick Singleton is going to get the ball this year. And if he goes off, and I'm not going to compare him to Mr. Barkley that we all, love.
No,
watching.
I did that.
That's your job. But if he goes off and does what we think he is, it's unrealistic to think that guys aren't going to transfer out. So I think that's kind of the mindset here. They really like London. They really like Trey. If they can get both, how do you not? And especially because I think Trey might commit. So I'm going back and forth on this one. Somebody kind of hinted to me that London could commit next week, but also there's talk about Trey committing next week. So there's a lot of moving parts with this one at the moment. So if London were to commit first, yeah, I still definitely see them. If Trey were to commit first, I don't see how Penn State can pass up on a 4-star talented running back from Pennsylvania when in-state recruiting is as important as it is. So I do think 2 running backs is realistic. But again, if one commits July 5th and the other commits July 18th, well, what happens in the middle there is going to have a big impact on the guy committing July 18th. It just kind of is how it is.
Anything else before we get out of here on Friday?
Remind me next time to put my phone on silent. That's it.
It's the pre-flight checks is what I call it. Got to make sure all of your stuff's in order before you get going. I've been praying that my camera, because we went to Live for Life yesterday, so I was using my camera yesterday, and now I'm like, oh, let's get to the end of this before the battery dies. So we have been playing with fire today, and luckily we just got a little bit singed. So that'll do it this week for the BWI Daily Edition, but if any news breaks over the weekend, anything happens, Ryan and I will be back to break it down for you. Breaking news here on YouTube. I'm your host, Thomas Frank Carr. Subscribe here on YouTube if you're listening on the podcast version. Thank you so much for being one of our almost 8,000 listeners now. Make sure you subscribe and you hit the download button so you always get the up-to-date BWI Daily Edition. I'm your host, Thomas Frank Carr. Happy 4th. We will be back next week, probably Tuesday.